So I get asked lots of questions as the CEO of Resume Pilots and CV Pilots. And obviously, a lot of what we focus on is the resume writing. That gets you through the door into the interview. Well, what are you going to do when you get into the interview? So, one of the questions that I get asked is how do you prepare for senior level interviews? And the interesting thing about this, and this is in tandem with the shift in expectation now, we're at that very front end of the recruitment process, is that the interviews stop being about questions and answers. They are much more about assessments of judgment. So what we're finding now from our clients is that the successful clients that have been through this process is that you're not really being evaluated on the job that you've done. They already know that you've done that job. We've talked about this in other videos. What they're testing is how you think, how you decide, and then, and this is the real crux, how you would lead under pressure in their world. So, in their set of constraints, in their set of people, in their markets, they want to know about in their world. How would you be able to replicate it in their world? How do you think? How do you decide? And how do you lead under pressure in their world? What they're really asking, and this is the really interesting thing to look at it from a different lens. What they're really asking is, can we trust you when the door closes and it's just us? Once we've hired you, once you're thrown into the chaos that is a business, can we trust you when it's just us? So to perform at that level, your achievements, of course, are important. But what you really need to be able to demonstrate is your clarity. You need lots of evidence and you need your foresight. So in the interview, you are going to need a clear value thesis. So a leadership thesis, a value thesis. And that is, here's what I'm known for. Here's the outcome that I will deliver in this role. So that's the bit that you need to be really clear about. Not just what I'm known for, because that's very important. And then this is the outcome that I'll deliver for you in this role. Then you need your 3 leadership evidence stories. Now, we've talked about this in a previous video, so I won't go into it in detail here, but essentially you need your growth story, your efficiency story, and your turnaround story. You must have at least one of these, ideally all 3. And then once you've got those 3 stories, you need to then frame those within the context of this new role that you're looking at, the constraints that you think they operate under, and therefore the outcomes that you would be able to deliver for them in their context under their constraints. The board is going to want to understand how you make decisions and your trade-off thinking. So how do you weigh risk? How do you make decisions at speed? So this isn't about just what you did. This is about how you think. Again, all about how replicable what you've done before would be for this new opportunity. At a senior level interview, you'd be looking at a 30, 60, 90-day perspective. Now, we're not talking about necessarily a full plan, although you could create a plan. But what they really want to understand is how you would orient yourself in their setting. How would you diagnose? How would you listen? How would you act? What would you do? What sorts of things would you be looking to do in your 30, 60, 90 days? And so the interview process is not really at this stage about practicing how to answer questions. You're certainly not looking to do any memorizing of things. What you're looking to do really is, rather than thinking about how would I answer that question, it's about what judgments would I be making in that particular scenario. So let's give you 2 questions. Tell me about a time that you chose stability over speed. They'd want to know the judgments that you're making in the answer to that. What would you walk away from in your first 90 days and why? It's not the specifics, it's the judgment, the process, the decision-making process, the judgments that you would use when you're looking at your first 90 days. So we worked with a chief operations officer recently. Um, Now, she wasn't getting through to any of the final round interviews. So she was doing a great job with her resume. She'd done a great job with her first round interviews. But what we were finding is there was something missing that meant that she didn't get through to the final round. And so we worked with her in interview prep, and we looked around much more around the decision making stories. So not forget your accomplishments, but let's not focus on those. Let's focus on your decision making. So when she was next called for an interview, as certainly a final round interview, she didn't talk so much about what she'd achieved. She talked about the judgment calls that she'd made when she was under pressure. That was the frame with which, the lens with which she looked through every interview question. And she contacted us just recently to say that she'd had some feedback from the chair. She'd been offered the role, and the feedback from the chair was, because of the way you talked about your judgments, you made us feel that we could be in the room with you during a crisis. Couldn't get better than that, and say she was offered the role. So the final thought I'd leave you with is that at that senior level, they are not hiring based on your answers. They are going to be hiring you based on your judgment, your decision making, and how you approach new constraints and problems like that. How you lead in times of challenge, what your judgments were, what your decision making was.